It's spooky season, so the Pokemon typing on everybody's minds is the Ghost type. Ghost type Pokemon throughout the entire series have always been creepy and spooky and just downright scary sometimes. There are a lot of Pokemon that are Ghost type that I would even consider to be some of my favorites of all time out of any type. We have a bunch of Ghost type Pokemon and Ghost type specialists that have appeared throughout the Pokemon series, and I think that a lot of them are incredibly designed. I would also go on to say that I think Ghost type Pokemon have some of the best Pokedex entries in the entire series, and if you've read them, you know. Are we sure this is a kid's game? Also, a lot of the time, Ghost type Pokemon are the ones that get these interesting backstories and have so much going on for them that you definitely can't say that they're boring. So in today's video, since it is spooky season, I thought why not make a video where I talk about my own personal ranking of all of the Ghost type Pokemon throughout the Pokemon series. And if you want to make sure that Volo doesn't ever surprise you with Giratina ever again, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button to make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And subscribing to the channel has also been scientifically proven to lessen Giratina sightings and awful second phases of boss fights. But alright, that's enough spooky silliness. Let's go ahead and dive right on into my Ghost type Pokemon tier list. Alright, and once again I have my laptop here, and I could not be more excited to go through these Ghost Pokemon today, and honestly, looking through these, there are a lot less Ghost Pokemon than I actually thought there were. Like, I didn't realize that there were this few. It's kind of crazy when you actually think about it and look at it right in front of you. I mean, I guess let's just go ahead and dive right on in. We are doing the classic standard tier list system today. We're just going S, A, B, C, and D. I myself am a massive fan of Ghost type Pokemon. I like a lot of them actually, so I do anticipate this is going to be very difficult for me because some of these are my children and I will take this very personally, and I will try to judge from the heart and try to judge very accurately. But of course, that all being said, at the end of the day, these are my opinions. Feel free to love whatever Pokemon you would like to love. I'm not stopping you, girl. But if I decide to put your favorite down in the D tier, please don't come for me. Alright, starting off with our only Ghost type Pokemon line that was in Generation 1, which is crazy that they introduced a Pokemon type and only had one evolution line for it when you actually think about it, which is the Gengar evolution line, starting off with Ghastly, of course. I think that Ghastly is a fairly successful Pokemon. I think out of the three, it is my least favorite, but of course, it's not bad by any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to go ahead and put Ghastly in the A tier. Moving right on along to Haunter, I think that Haunter is a actually really great middle evolution, which you definitely cannot say for all of them. And so I think Haunter is definitely going to go right next to Ghastly in the A tier. I think that Haunter, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. But Gengar, we got to talk about Gengar here. Gengar is S tier. I mean, it is no shocker, it is no surprise, everybody loves Gengar. If I hear that you don't like Gengar, what's wrong? Like, why don't you like it? I don't get it. Of course, we have some forms of Gengar here, and for these, honestly, I'm not too crazy about either of them, but if I had to say that one of them was better than the other, I would say I do happen to prefer Gigantamax Gengar, just because I think the giant mouth is kind of hilarious. And have y'all ever seen that blanket, or at least I think it's a blanket or something, where it's like Gigantamax Gengar, where you can like put yourself in the mouth, and it's very odd. I'm going to go ahead and put Gigantamax Gengar in the B tier, and I'm going to put Mega Gengar, I would say, still in the B tier. It is not awful, I don't dislike it by any means, but I definitely do prefer Gigantamax Gengar. They're around the same for me, but I just prefer Gigantamax a little bit more. Alolan Marowak is a fantastic regional variant, and I will not hear anyone say otherwise, because I think that when this Pokemon came out, I was so excited. First of all, because I think that it just really was needed for Marowak to get some type of love, some type of attention, and I'm really glad that it did. And second of all, because I feel like Alolan Marowak was just so fitting for the Alola region, and I love when the Pokemon that get regional variants and regional forms really match the vibe and aesthetic of the place that they are put in, and I feel like this was perfect. This was absolutely a well done job, and I think that Alolan Marowak for me is A tier. I don't think that it's perfect by any means, but I really do enjoy it a lot. Hisuian Typhlosion, for me personally, I know not everybody will agree with this opinion, I know this might be controversial. I'm gonna go ahead and put Hisuian Typhlosion in the S tier. I said it, I did it. I'm putting Hisuian Typhlosion in the S tier. I have a plushie of him up there. I don't even know if you can see it, but it's up there, I promise. I was obsessed with this Pokemon from the jump. I was already a Typhlosion stan. I pick Cyndaquil almost every time it's available to me, and it came as no shocker that, of course, I was going to pick Typhlosion once again, especially seeing a new regional evolution that I thought is better than Typhlosion. Dare I say, I like this better than the normal Typhlosion. So for me personally, I really enjoy its design. I think it's great in battle. I think I just personally enjoy everything about it, but maybe that's just me, who knows? I love it. Moving right on along to our only Ghost-type Pokemon from Generation 2, that being Misdreavus. I mean, Pokemon, just what were we thinking? Introducing the Ghost-typing and then having one evolution line and then introducing one more Pokemon for your second generation. That's insane. And then the fact that we had not one, but two Ghost-type specialists with an Elite Four member in Agatha and then Morty as a gym leader, when we have 4 Pokemon. We have 4 Ghost-type Pokemon and 2 specialists. Make it make sense. That all being said, my anger aside, Misdreavus is a fantastic Pokemon. I do very much enjoy Misdreavus' design. I think that I definitely prefer its evolution. Mismagius will get there, but I think that Misdreavus for me is in the B tier. I think that it's very cute. Not my favorite. Mismagius, on the other hand, I think was a very much needed evolution. I love its design. It's definitely, to me, better than Misdreavus, and that's what an evolution should be. It should be evolving upon everything that the pre-evolution is, and I definitely think that it does do that for Misdreavus. So I think that Mismagius for me is absolutely A tier without a question. Next up is the regional variants for Corsola and its new evolution, Cursula, and for me, I think Corsola has always been a Pokemon that's kind of been on the fence for me. I think it's very cute. It's near unusable in battle. Like, I have always had a like for this Pokemon, but it always needed something. It needed some kind of attention, and I feel like that is exactly where these regional variants shine, is giving these Pokemon some love and some attention. Storyline makes sense. I love the concept of it. And I love that they gave it an evolution, because I feel like if they didn't do a regional variant for it, that's what I would have suggested for Corsola to begin with, would have been an evolution. I still would like to see an evolution for Corsola now. I definitely don't think that that is out of the question for Corsola. I would really like to see it. But as for these two, I think that Cursula and Corsola are both in the A tier. Honestly, I do enjoy these redesigns quite a bit, and I think that they are very well done and very well conceptualized. Now moving along to a generation that introduced more than one Ghost-type Pokemon. Thank God we finally moved away from that, and that is Generation 3's Ghost-type Pokemon, starting off with Shedinja. I have always had this interest in Shedinja. Is it good? Kind of. I mean, its ability kind of makes it good. Its ability is kind of the most memorable thing about it, but I mean, the design, I love the concept of it, and that it's the husk and shell that was left behind when it evolves. I think that the concept is there without question. It is awesome in that regard. In terms of design, it is not my favorite thing in the world, so just for that sake, I'm going to put it in the B tier. But I mean, concept, incredible, immaculate, great concept. Sableye and Mega Sableye, personal favorites of mine. Y'all, I feel like I'm just being boring by putting like everything in the top, but I mean, there are Ghost-type Pokemon that I don't enjoy, and we will get there, trust. But I mean, I love Sableye. I feel like I'm just putting everything in the top, but it's all warranted. I mean, these Pokemon are great. I mean, we were only getting like 2 or 3 Ghost-type Pokemon a generation. They had to be somewhat decent. So for Sableye and Mega Sableye, I definitely prefer Mega Sableye. That to me is S tier, without a doubt, without question. I talked about that in my Mega Pokemon video, which if you've not seen me ranking Mega Pokemon, you definitely should go check it out. As for regular Sableye, I'm going to go ahead and put Sableye in the A tier. I know it is not really that great in battle. Before it got its Mega Evolution, it wasn't that much desired on your Pokemon team, but I still had fun using it. Shuppet and Bayonet and Mega Bayonet, our next Ghost-type evolution line. I think that Shuppet is fine. I don't have any issues with Shuppet. I just don't have any strong feelings about it. So because this is the first Ghost-type Pokemon that I don't have any particular feelings about, negative or positive, I'm going to put Shuppet in the C tier, and I know, dangerous, the first C tier Pokemon. Yeah, I haven't even looked at the D tier yet, so I'm nervous for if we get to a Pokemon that makes me feel like that. As for Bayonet, I definitely prefer Mega Bayonet once again. I think that the concept is just so well done here, adding the zippers and the claws. It just looks scarier and more intimidating, and as y'all know, I love anything that is scary and kind of creepy. I think that it absolutely is just a nice vibe that I enjoy, especially in a Nintendo game. I think Nintendo actually surprisingly does creepy really well. So Mega Bayonet for me is a S tier Pokemon. I really enjoy it a lot, and then for regular Bayonet, I would say A tier. It's a very, very good made Pokemon. Duskull, Dusclops, and Dusknoir are our next evolution line we'll be talking about, and for Duskull, I think, again, out of the 3, it is my least favorite, but that doesn't mean that I don't like it. I still think that Duskull is very well done. I love the skull
mask. I think that is easily my favorite thing about this Pokemon, and then I love in the Pokemon Coliseum and XD sprites that you can kind of see the eye going back and forth. I think this design was just really, really good. And so I'm going to put Duskull in the B tier purely because it is my least out of the 3, but I do really enjoy it. As for Dusclops, I actually, controversial opinion here, I love Dusclops. I think that I have always had a love for Dusclops, and I think it's because I played Generation 3 as one of my first Pokemon games. Generation 3 was kind of where I was first getting into Pokemon, and so Dusclops was one of the first Ghost-type Pokemon I really got to use on my team that I felt like was kind of actually useful. You know, when you only had things like Misdreavus, and you had things like Gengar locked behind trading with friends, and did I have those at the time who were playing Pokemon? Probably not. So Dusclops was one of the first Pokemon that I really got to use, and Dusknoir didn't exist at this point yet, so I think I have a lot of nostalgia for Dusclops. I think that's what it is. And also I remember Dusclops in the anime, and it was really strong in the battle. I think in the Battle Frontier, I forget what the trainer's name was. It Brandon? It was one of the Frontier Brains used a Dusclops, and I remember that episode distinctly. For some reason I don't remember his name. I'm gonna put Dusclops in the A tier. I really enjoy Dusclops. And then for me, Dusknoir is a fantastic evolution. I just don't enjoy as much as Dusclops, but I'm gonna put Dusknoir in the A tier as well. Also, shout out to Dusknoir in the Mystery Dungeon games, and if you've not played Mystery Dungeon, girl, where you been at? Have you been living under a rock? I know they haven't had a game in a while, but like they need more. And with Dusknoir comes along our Generation 4 Ghost-type Pokemon, and we're going to be starting off with Drifloon and Drifblim. And I think that these Pokemon, their concept is not only creepy and scary, but like just downright disturbing. I mean, the fact that these Pokemon steal children away by flying them up through the air, that's terrifying. Okay, I don't even want to think about this Pokemon if it existed in real life. Like, that's absolutely horrifying. But in terms of design, I mean, I think that Drifblim to me is the one that I definitely prefer. So I'm going to put Drifblim in the A tier, and then for me, Drifloon, honestly, I would say same feelings as Shuppet, but just a little bit more. So I'm going to put Drifloon in the B tier. Next up is Spiritomb, and this Pokemon is iconic to me. Again, I feel like there's a lot of nostalgia there, and because this was a Pokemon I didn't really get to use a lot, this Pokemon was considered a mystery to me for like most of my childhood life, because I never really got to use it because I didn't do the whole like Keystone event, mostly because I didn't know how to do the Keystone stuff. So every time I saw this Pokemon, I saw it on Cynthia's team, I was just so intrigued and interested by it, and I loved that before the Fairy typing, this Pokemon didn't really have any weaknesses. So just for that in itself, I think Spiritomb is an icon, and this needs to be talked about more, how much of an icon Spiritomb is, so I'll be putting Spiritomb in the S tier, and I did what I did. Frostlass for me, easy choice. Easy choice right here, absolutely no questions asked. Frostlass is in the S tier. Not only is the concept great, the design is great, but she slays. She is gorgeous, she is beautiful, she is the Snow Queen. I would want a Frostlass on my team. If I were a Ghost-type specialist myself, if I were a Ghost-type trainer, Elite Four, Gym Leader, whatever, I would want a Frostlass hands down. I love this Pokemon so freaking much. Rotom is iconic. I think that Rotom just having so many different forms and is now such a kind of staple in the Pokemon series. Like, they're in cell phones, they're in just all this technology, they're in bikes. Like, it's just crazy how Rotom has become this Pokemon that is incorporated in everything nowadays. That's kind of insane. So I think just for Rotom's iconicness throughout the series, I would be amiss to not put it in S tier. I think that this Pokemon truly has proven itself time and time again, just how iconic it is. And I mean, not only is it fun to use in battle and it's fun to have all these different forms, but I mean, it deserves its flowers. You need to give it. And also, it was like a legendary for a time. Do y'all remember that way back when, back in like, what was it, the old Chateau? Like, everyone thought that Rotom was a legendary Pokemon. Did they ever call it a legendary Pokemon? I for some reason remember that happening. Also, shout out to another one of my favorite Pokemon creators, Game Boy Luke. I watch your videos all the time, and every time I see Rotom, I think about Game Boy Luke. Giratina, our first Ghost-type legendary Pokemon that we'll be talking about today, and I think that Giratina is fantastic. I can't decide which of the forms I like better. I think that they're both really, really good. Honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and put both forms in the S tier. I think that these Pokemon are just really well done. When I think of well done legendary Pokemon, Giratina would absolutely be on that list. Not only do I think the design is great, but its storyline is great. I love its connection to Arceus, and speaking of Arceus, for some reason we have the Ghost-type Arceus form on here. I am gonna put this in the D tier just because I'm not counting this as a ghost type Pokemon. Y'all, like, whatever. I'm not saying I don't like it. That's not why I'm putting it in the D tier. This is purely going in the D tier because I don't consider this a ghost type Pokemon. Like, sure, it is ghost type, but it's not a ghost type Pokemon. You know what I'm saying? Moving on to my personal favorite generation, Generation 5. Let's talk about our first Pokemon here, Yamask. We have Galarian Yamask as well, and then Cofagrigus and Runerigus. So first talking about the Yamasks, I think that for Yamask in the Unova version is definitely what I prefer out of the two of them, so I'm going to put Unova Yamask in the A tier. As for Galarian Yamask, I'm not as crazy about it as I am Unova Yamask, but I think I'm going to put this one in the B tier, just because I wouldn't say I hate it, but I don't like it as much as Unova Yamask. As for the battle of Cofagrigus and Runerigus, I think that Runerigus was very well done. I think that this Pokemon is great. And Cofagrigus is also great. I think that both of these Pokemon to me, I wouldn't say I adore them, but they are both great. I think they're both really, really good and easily deserving of the A tier. I think that both of them are also very fun to use, and on my Sword and Shield playthrough, I actually used a Runerigus several times on several playthroughs. Next up for some reason is Hisuian Zorua and Zoroark, I think because they're regional variants of Gen 5 Pokemon, so we're gonna talk about them now. So I think that these Pokemon, both of them are S tier. I don't think I even need to explain myself on why that's the case. I mean, if you look at these Pokemon and think that they are bad, what are you looking at? Like, what Pokemon are you looking at? Because these Pokemon are fantastic. Hisuian Zoroark, I would say, is probably one of the best regional variants we have ever gotten, point blank period. Moving on to Frillish and Jellicent. For Frillish and Jellicent, I think that it's really interesting how much of a drastic appearance difference they have between the male and female versions, and I think that's part of what made this Pokemon so interesting to me and so desirable to use, is because I feel like you could use it in multiple playthroughs and you could use different types, and it was fun because you felt like you were using a new Pokemon, sort of, just because it looked so different. Definitely would say that I prefer the male Jellicent line because I think that it looking like the Pringles Man is very, very funny, and I know that this Pokemon is actually kind of scary in what it does if you've ever read any Pokedex entries for this Pokemon. Horrifying. Definitely don't look it up if you're for the faint of heart. But I would say for the male versions, these are A tier for me. I think that both of them are really well done. Also, I have a bias for blue. That is no secret. For the female ones, I definitely like them. I just don't think I like them as much as I like the A tiers. So I'm going to go ahead and put the female ones in the B tier. But they're still very, very cute. Honestly, now that I'm looking at them, let me rethink. You know what? I've rethought about it. I've changed my opinion. I've changed my ways. I'm going to put the female Frillish in the A tier. Now that I'm looking at this design a little bit more, I think that the way that it's a little more frilly on the bottom, Frillish, I do actually really enjoy the female Frillish as well. I think that both Frillishes are very, very well designed. I just think that something about the female Jellicent is not my favorite. Moving right on along to some object Pokemon, which I know is everybody's favorite to talk about. Let's talk about the Chandelure evolution line. I think that Litwick, Lampent, and Chandelure all have something that you could like about them. I especially love their shinies. I think that they have some of the best shinies out of any Pokemon, honestly. I just really, really enjoy their shinies. And I think that if you were able to shiny hunt this Pokemon, definitely do. It's a worthwhile and nice shiny to have. I think Chandelure, for me, didn't used to be this way, but kind of grew to be this way. So I know this is gonna be extremely controversial, but this is my video, and if you would like to rank them, then make one of your own. Chandelure, for me, is gonna be in the S tier. I don't care what y'all say. And also, Pokemon also seems to think this Pokemon is iconic because they use it in everything. They use it in everything. Chandelure is everywhere. Like, it's in so many different games. As for the other ones, I mean, Litwick and Lampent, I am not crazy about either of them. I would say for me, these are easy B tiers. For Golett and Golurk, I definitely think that Golurk is a very good Pokemon. I think that the fact that it flies is insane. I love it. And also Golurk kind of gives like a little bit of Ghibli vibe to me, so I definitely think that's another thing I like about it. So I'm going to put Golurk in the A tier. But as for Golett, I'm really not that crazy about it. It's really not that memorable to me. I would say it's in a very similar vein to Shuppet, and so it's going to be our second Pokemon in the C tier. I don't dislike it, but it's just not anything crazy to me. Going on to Generation 6, we have another object Pokemon, everybody's favorite. I think that the Aegislash line is actually pretty well liked when I think about it. I think that it is a very well done Pokemon. I think that the fact that it is a sword imbued with the spirit of a ghost is very, very cool. I think Honedge for me is in the B tier, whereas Doublade would be A tier. And then I don't know why they listed them as different here, but the defense and attack forms, or what, the sword and shield forms, whatever they're called, they're listed as different Pokemon for some reason. But honestly, I'm gonna put both of them in the S tier. I think Aegislash is just a really good Pokemon to begin with, and so I'm gonna put them both up there. They deserve it. Phantump and Trevenant. This is a sad Pokemon. If you've ever, again, read the Pokedex entry, well, first of all, honestly, y'all should read the Pokedex entries for a lot of the Ghost-type Pokemon, because it is kind of insane what Pokemon thinks that they can just get away with putting in a game. Phantump is actually very, very sad, so I feel bad doing this to Phantump, but it's really not my favorite, so I'm gonna put it in the B tier. I think that it's just fine. As for Trevenant, I definitely thought that this Pokemon was cool when it was announced. I mean, a spooky tree Pokemon, how could you not like that? But I think with its inclusion in Pokemon Unite, and also with how much I kind of used it in Pokemon Unite when it first came out, I think I gained a lot more love for it and respect for it than I had when it originally came out, and so I'm going to put Trevenant in the A tier. Next up we have Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist, and I'm so happy that we got, like, pumpkin Pokemon. Like, I don't know, like, that's always something that I've kind of been wanting. Do you ever have, like, a Pokemon that you just kind of, like, think of in your head and you're kind of waiting for the official Pokemon company to actually make it? Well, that for me was a pumpkin or Halloween centered Pokemon, and I'm very, very happy that we got that with Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist. I think they're both very, very cute. I think that for me personally, and now that I'm looking at my list, this may be the first time I think I've done this to where I prefer the pre-evolution over the evolution. But I think Pumpkaboo is adorable, and I'm going to put Pumpkaboo in the A tier, and I'm going to put Gourgeist in the B tier. For me, it's just fine. I don't love Gourgeist, but I think it's still a very cute Pokemon. For Hoopa, I don't believe we have the option of the Unbound form, which is kind of crazy when I think about it, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about both of them here. If I had to do both of them, I would say the bound form of Hoopa is not my favorite. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think its voice in the movie kind of scarred me a little bit. For some reason, I don't like the voice. That's a me personally thing. I don't think it's very cute. I don't like it. I don't know. So for me, Hoopa in the bound form kind of is a C tier Pokemon. It's fun to use in Unite. I'm not crazy about it. If Unbound was on this list, Unbound would have probably been in the A or the S tier for me. I think that Unbound is miles better than the Bound form. Next up is Generation 7, and for Generation 7 we have our first Ghost-type starter Pokemon. Well, aside from Hisui and Typhlosion, but if we're talking about going by generation after generation, then technically Decidueye was the first one. So for Decidueye, I think that it's just classic at this point. It's really, really great. I mean, how could you not? I mean, some people probably think that Decidueye is overrated, overliked, too many people talk about it. I have always enjoyed Decidueye, I've always been a fan of Decidueye, and I'm not going to apologize for that. I think it's a really well done Pokemon. Am I biased by the fact that Decidueye does archery and I also happen to do archery growing up? Maybe. I'll give you a maybe on that one. The ghost form of Oricorio, I think that this one is actually probably my favorite out of any of them. I mean, the Oricorio forms, they're all pretty cute, they're all pretty adorable. I don't hate any of them, but I think that this one is absolutely my favorite. This is going in the A tier for sure. If it had been any of the other ones, they would have gone in the B tier because I think they're fine, but this one is my favorite. Sandygast and Palossand. I think that Palossand is a great idea for a Pokemon. I think that this Pokemon was very well thought out. I love what they tried to do here with this Pokemon. So for Palossand, I think I'm gonna put it in the B tier. It's not my favorite thing to ever exist. Let's talk about Sandygast. Sandygast to me is forgettable. I don't love Sandygast. I'm sorry for the Sandygast fandom out there, but I forget this Pokemon exists sometimes. Heck, I almost forgot its name just now before talking about it. Palossand to me is the memorable one. Like, I can remember and think of Palossand. I hardly ever think about Sandygast. So for that reason, I think we have our first D-tier Pokemon next to, you know, the Ghost-type Arceus, which we've already talked about it. So yeah, crazy. Sandygast is gonna go down there. We got another thing going straight into the D-tier. We have our Ghost-type Silvally, and I'm gonna just, yeah, you already know. Mimikyu is an S tier. I don't even gotta talk about it. I don't even gotta joke. I don't gotta... Mimikyu, what they managed to do with this Pokemon is incredible. I think that Mimikyu is one of the most well-storylined, well-thought-out. I mean, this Pokemon just wanting all the love and admiration of Pikachu so much that it designs its cloak to look like Pikachu. Also, just very happy about the typing. I mean, Ghost Fairy type is amazing, and I consider myself a Fairy type specialist at the end of the day. Go watch my Fairy type video if you haven't seen it yet. But I think that Fairy type Pokemon are awesome, and I'm really happy that we got one like Mimikyu, because it definitely stands out. We have another Pokemon that you may have forgotten even existed, and that is going to be Dhelmise. And Dhelmise, honestly, I think they had a good idea. The fact that this Pokemon is like the steering wheel and anchor of an abandoned ship. You know, it's got the seaweed all over it, it's kind of like busted and cracked, and I think that that is a great concept, but for some reason, I still barely remember this Pokemon at all. And why is that? I mean, I enjoy its design. I think that it is definitely not the worst Pokemon in the world to use on your team, even though you get it, you know, fairly late in the game, and maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know, but for some reason, I barely remember Dhelmise, and so I'm gonna put it in the C tier just purely for that reason. Next up, we have some more Ghost-type legendary Pokemon to talk about with Lunala and Duskwings, or at least that's what I think it's called. I think it's called Duskwings. I don't know. It's been a while since I played Generation 7. Lunala, for me, is absolutely in the S tier. I mean, I think that this Pokemon's design from day one, the second I saw it, the second I heard that the games were coming out and the box arts were revealed, I knew I was getting Pokemon Moon, because absolutely looking at this compared to Solgaleo, it was no question for me. It was no doubt in my mind that I was picking Lunala. As for Duskwings, I'm not as crazy about it. I don't enjoy this as much as I enjoy Lunala in its pure form, but I think that this is still pretty well done, so I'm gonna put this in the A tier. Shadow is a Pokemon that I just wish I was able to use more, and I feel that way about a lot of mythical Pokemon. Just because mythical Pokemon obviously are mythical, they're very rare and hard to come by, mostly because some of them have events, and some of which have events that you can't even participate in. And so for Marshadow, it's like, it's always looked cool, but it's at a distance. Like, it's always kind of like too far out of my reach. Like, Marshadow, I would love to use you, but you're never around. I invite you to the parties, and you never come. So for Marshadow, for me, I like it. I think it's really cool, but I think just because I've never gotten to use it for any reason or in any game, I'm gonna put it in the B tier. You can call that personal, and it absolutely is. It absolutely is personal, Marshadow. Cephalon is a weird one, okay? Like, I've thought about making a video talking about the Ultra Beasts and, like, what's going on there, because I feel like it just needs to be looked at and it needs to be talked about what's going on with the Ultra Beasts. Blacephalon, to me, I think is just odd, but I think that's kind of its thing. Hello, so funny story. My camera actually died in the middle of that last take, and so this is a new day. That's why it looks a lot more well lit and a lot more sunny, because I'm not filming in the absolute dead of night. As I was saying last night, my feelings have not changed from one night to the next. Blacephalon is a absolute weirdo, and the ranking is going to reflect as such. I feel like it works for this Pokemon, but it's still very just odd. So I'm going to go ahead and put Blacephalon in the B tier, because I think the design really works for it and exactly what they were going for. Also, I love me a Ghost Fire type, but it's weird. Next up is our Generation 8 Ghost-type Pokemon, and I feel like Generation 8 and Generation 9 really did a solid job with Ghost-type Pokemon. I like a lot of these Pokemon left, just like skimming through them. There's a couple, we'll get to them. We'll talk about them later. Starting off with our first ones, we have Sinistea and Poltegeist. I think once again, talking about the object Pokemon, everybody has their feelings about the object Pokemon, but honestly, for the ghost types, I feel like it makes a lot of sense, because a ghost or some sort of entity is possessing these objects, and that is how they are coming to life. I feel like for ghost type Pokemon, it just makes a lot of sense, like it just works a little bit more. So I would definitely say that I prefer Poltegeist over Sinistea in this case, so I would say for me, Poltegeist is in the A and Sinistea is in the B tier, but both of them really, really solid Pokemon. As for the Dragapult line, I think that the Dragon Ghost typing is very, very good. I love Dragapult as a Pokemon, probably one of my favorite pseudo-legendaries that we have ever gotten across any game, and let me know if you agree down in the comment section below, but I think that Dragapult is easily one of the best ones. So Dragapult, for me, is going to be in the S tier, so I'm going to put Dragapult up there, and then for the other ones, I think Dracloak is A, and then I hate to do this to all these, you know, first form pre-evolutions, but I just think that Dreepy is the weakest out of the three of them, and so I'm going to put Dreepy in the C tier. It's just really not my favorite. I think the other two just evolve and have so much detail and Dreepy is just fine. For Spectrier and Calyrex Shadow Rider form, honestly, these are exactly the same, and I'm not judging Calyrex here because Calyrex is not a Ghost-type Pokemon, so I'm literally just judging Spectrier with a Pokemon on its back versus without a Pokemon on its back. I like it to the same degree. I think that it is a really well done Pokemon. I think it's majestic and graceful and all the good things, and I think that this design was really well done. I personally will always choose Spectrier over Glasstrier. I think Glasstrier has things to like about it, but I think Spectrier, in my opinion, is just miles better. Next up is Basculegion, a Pokemon that I am so happy that this Pokemon exists. I mean, taking a Pokemon like Basculin, which is... yeah, and then giving it a new evolution. Granted, I mean, we still have the red and the blue stripe form. It's only the white stripe form that evolves into Basculegion, but still giving Basculin an opportunity to get more attention, get more love, which, as I've spoken about, is something that I really enjoy seeing in Pokemon. I think that Basculegion was really well done. I'm a fan of both of them, and so I'm going to go ahead and put both of them in the S tier. I really have a fondness for both of them. Right, y'all, we gotta talk about these next two. Skeleturge and Ceruledge are both immediately going into the S tier, and let me tell you why. Starting with Skeleturge, I mean, I love this Pokemon so freaking much because it is a starter Pokemon that I feel like looks like this big monster crocodile that still has something really cute about it. It likes to sing. It has this little like fiery bird on its nose that turns into a microphone when it uses Torch Song. I just think there really is so much to like about Skeleturge, and I think that the white and the red and the purple accents on its body, I think that this design was so well done, and honestly, if I wasn't so biased towards the Quaxly evolution line, I would say Skeleturge is right up there next to it. I think that this Pokemon was just really well done. Probably one of my favorite design final evolutions in a long time. As for Ceruledge, I mean, this Pokemon, the second they announced Ceruledge and Armarouge, I knew I was going to be in love with them. I knew I was going to be in love with them, and I have stayed in love with them ever since. I have wanted to use Ceruledge almost every time. I get tempted to use it every time. I think this Pokemon's design is easily peak. It is one of the best I have ever seen in my entire life, so I would be so wrong to not put this in the S tier. And just as I was building everybody up, I'm about to tear them right back down because we are moving on to Bramblin and Brambleghast, which I think are some of the weakest Ghost-type Pokemon we have ever received. I'm not saying that I hate them. I'm not saying that they're gross or ugly or whatever. I just think they're bad. They're not my favorite. I just think it's a little boring. I'm gonna say Bramblin especially. Bramblin especially deserves to go in that D tier. And I'm gonna put Brambleghast in the C tier purely because it's like, I see the concept. It's a little better than Bramblin. But Bramblin, I mean, this is a tumbleweed with eyeballs. Y'all, it's fine. It's fine. For Greavard and Houndstone, both of these Pokemon are really adorable. I would say I definitely prefer Greavard over Houndstone, but I think both of them in my eyes are absolutely worthy of the A tier. They're not my personal favorites, but they're really, really cute, so I'm gonna put them in the A tier. I think Greavard especially. I love how in-game you just see the little candle sticking out of the ground, and for Houndstone the same thing with the tombstone sticking out. I just think that they are very, very well designed. Annihilate is an automatic S tier. When I tell you that Generation 8 and Generation 9 really excelled with making Ghost-type Pokemon, Annihilate is another perfect example of this. I mean, Primeape was a Pokemon that I have always had an affinity for. I've always enjoyed Primeape, and the fact that we finally got an evolution for it in Generation 9, which I feel like was very well needed and very well deserved, and it was as good as Annihilate is. I mean, we've always seen it in its Pokedex entries about how it could get so angry that it passes away, and we see that in its evolution here into Annihilate, and I think that the concept is there, the design is there, it's so good in battle. I just really enjoy using this Pokemon, and so Annihilate for me, it's without question. Next up is our only Ghost-type Paradox Pokemon, and I mean, what a Pokemon to talk about here. Fluttermane is truly something. I mean, granted, yes, the design is not that different from Misdreavus, and we all know how I felt about Misdreavus, but I feel like because Fluttermane is so good competitively, it adds a little bit more detail on the body than Misdreavus does, and I mean, I just really have an affinity for the Scarlet Paradox Pokemon. I think that they're all really, really cool. I would say Fluttermane, to me, is definitely A tier. For the reasons that I had for Misdreavus, I'm not going to put it in the S tier, but Fluttermane, it's a really good Pokemon, that's no secret to anybody. Moving on to Gimmighoul and Goldango, our 1000th Pokemon here talking about Goldango. I mean, we'll get to Goldango, but first talking about Gimmighoul, I think that this Pokemon, to me, is fine. When I had first heard the rumors that we were going to be getting a gimmick chest Pokemon, so many different designs, so many different versions popped up in my mind when I thought of what a gimmick chest Pokemon would look like, and Gimmighoul was not it. I'm not saying this Pokemon is bad by any means. I think it's very adorable. I love this art of it just dragging the coin, and I love how it is just a little coin-obsessed little monster that's hiding inside of a treasure chest. I think it is very, very cute. So I'm going to put both of these in the B tier purely for that, but I mean, I really think with a gimmick chest that it could have been just a little better, at least for me. As for Gholdengo, this is the Pokemon of the video. I feel like I have one in every single video where I rank and talk about any kind of Pokemon where I used to not like it, I used to not enjoy it, and I have gone through a personal journey of growth with this Pokemon. When I first saw Gholdengo, I was immensely disappointed. I thought, what the heck is this cheese string looking thing that is riding a skateboard across my screen? I hated it. I did not enjoy Gholdengo whatsoever. But as time passed along, I did the Gimmighoul side quest, I found all those godforsaken coins, and I got myself a Gholdengo, and I started to use it in battle. I started to just see it a lot more, especially with the movement of its sprite, and I just was exposed to it a lot more frequently. As time went on, I noticed that that hate for it had started to dissipate somehow. I feel like Gholdengo is a Pokemon that you shouldn't be taking too seriously. Gholdengo is a Pokemon that kind of lives in this goofy territory, and once you've kind of established that in your mind that that's kind of what it's going for with its design, you do start to enjoy it a little bit more because you accept it for what it actually is. So for a Pokemon that I absolutely would have put in the D tier, probably when the game first came out, has now grown to be an S tier? Y'all, I don't know how we got here. I don't know how we got here either, but we're at a point where I'm putting Gholdengo in the S tier. Like, I don't know if something's wrong with me. I don't know what is going on, but that is just personally how I feel. And we are finishing off today's video with our last 3 Ghost-type Pokemon to talk about, which all came about in our Scarlet and Violet DLC, and all 3 of these Pokemon I am obsessed with. Like, when I tell you how obsessed with these Pokemon I am, I have plushies of all of them now. Like, as soon as plushies were available for them, I bought them immediately. Now, first of all, just talking about Sinistcha and Poltergeist, I think that these Pokemon being based off of matcha, as a big matcha drinker myself, I immediately was excited. The second I heard we were having a matcha Pokemon, I was like, this design's gonna be so fun. This design's gonna be really incredible, and guess what? I was correct. Poltergeist for me is A tier. I love that it carries around a little matcha spoon and that it is a haunted jar of matcha. I think that that's really cute, especially its Pokédex entry and story. If you haven't seen that video on YouTube where it was first announced to be revealed for Pokemon, I think that the storyline of it is really cute and fun, but Sinistcha for me is top tier. S tier Pokemon right here. I mean, the fact that it is a little matcha ghoul that is sitting in a bowl or cup of matcha, and then it has the matcha whisk on its head like a little broken pieces here and there. I just think that this Pokemon, oh my god. Like, the concept is so fun, it's so cute, and how could you not enjoy this Pokemon? I just think that it's really cool. And I know some people out there probably think that it's really goofy and silly and dumb, but that's kind of what I enjoy about it. And like, plus it's a matcha Pokemon, like I said, I'm a little bit biased. I think that it's very, very cute. I also made it one of my top priorities to find a shiny of as soon as I was able to shiny hunt it. Then our final Pokemon of the day that we're going to be talking about is our newest mythical Pokemon, Pecharunt, and this is a ghost poison type Pokemon, the very first since Gengar, and this Pokemon, I mean, I think the storyline speaks for itself. The fact that we got such an in-depth storyline for this mythical Pokemon that is just really fun, and we saw it in the Mochi Mayhem, and yes, the dancing was dumb. Yes, okay, the dancing was stupid, but I mean, the song slapped. The song was amazing. I would start dancing too. If you want to see me talk about Pecharunt, I believe I made a whole short about it here on the channel somewhere. I'm sure you could find it, but I have an obsession with Pecharunt. I think that its dark design with all the blacks, the purples, the pinks mixing together, I think that it's really, really well done. I think the storyline is great, the concept is great, and I mean the Ariana Grande ponytail, how could you not? I mean, then she comes out of the shell and breaks free. I mean, it's great. It's really great. So for me, personally, Pecharunt is an S tier. And there you have it, we have our finished list of Pokemon here today of ranking all of the Ghost-type Pokemon throughout the series that exists so far. Let me know down in the comment section below if you agree or disagree with any of my choices. I would say, currently, if I had to pick my absolute favorite top-tier Ghost-type Pokemon, I would say it either would be Hisuian Zoroark or Ceruledge is my favorite at the moment, but it changes all the time. And then as for my least favorite Ghost-type Pokemon, I feel like it easily has to be Bramblin. As much as I feel like I forget about Sandygast, I cannot forgive this basic design for Bramblin, and again, that is how I feel personally about it. That'll be all for today's video. As always, thank y'all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and make sure to let me know down in the comment section below which ghost-type Pokemon is your favorite and least favorite. Throughout this month, I definitely plan to make a lot more spooky-themed content throughout the month of October in spirit of the Halloween season, just because it's one of my favorite times of year, so I look forward to talking about a lot of different spooky stuff here on the channel. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go ahead and pour myself a nice cup of Sinistcha.